Hello 9th class. Today we are going to start with the third chapter of your biology, that is tissues, plant and animal tissues. So we are going to deal with both plant and animal tissues in this chapter. This chapter is going to be very important for you even if you give up bio in 11th and 12th, because it is very essential for various competitive exams. Even if you drop biology, this chapter you must study nicely, thoroughly, because it will be useful in your various competitive exams that you give after 12th, even after taking maths. So we are going to start with the chapter. पहले आपको ये पता होना चाहिए कि what are tissues. You know what is a cell. You've already studied cell and its basic structure, all the details, all the organelles of the cell. Now we are going to start with the tissues. So what do you call a tissue? You've learned about the hierarchy of organization in an animal. So we are just going to revise it. That cells make up tissues. All the cells of a body, the similar cells group together and they make up tissues. So tissue will be a group of cells which have similar structure and they will be performing a particular function. Like they will be assigned a specific function. Similar cells performing a similar function or performing a specific function will be termed as tissues. So cells make up tissues. Tissues join together to form organs. Various organs join together to form organ systems, and the organ systems combine to form an organism, which may be a plant or an animal. So we are going to study about the tissues here, the second level of hierarchy, that is tissues. Now you know the basics of a cell, all the structures of a cell, so we are not going to into those details. We'll just deal with how are the tissues formed and how do they perform their various functions. So a tissue, this definition is given here. A tissue is a group of similar cells performing a specific function. Like similar kind of cells, when they group together and they perform a specific function, they are known as tissues. Now most plants and animals possess a tissue system. All the plants and animals as well, they possess a tissue system. That is, tissues are common to both plants and animals. The human body, in this book they have given an example, like in human body, epithelial tissue covering the skin, the muscular tissue made up of muscle cells. These are all examples of tissues: muscular tissue, epithelial tissue, and our heart is also composed of various muscles. That is also a different kind of muscle, cardiac muscles, which our heart is composed of. That is also a tissue. And in plants we have various kinds of tissue which form the body of the plant, and also they perform various functions. Like the conducting tissues conduct water upward from the soil to the aerial parts, and the food which is prepared by the green leaves is transported to the lower part. So you know which part conduct water from soil to the aerial part? You know very well, that is xylem. And the food is conducted from the green leaves to all the parts of the plant through the tissue phloem. So these are the plant tissues. We'll be studying them in detail later on in this chapter. Now there is a relationship between tissue, organ system and organism, which I have already written here. Now we are going to read it. Several tissues together contribute to some specific function inside the body. They constitute an organ, such as tongue having epithelial cells, nerve cells, muscle cells, etc. Many organs, they act together to perform another specific life process, and that is known as an organ system. Such as, the best example is our digestive system. Digestive system consists of so many organs, which you will be studying in this class later on. You have your digestive system. So digestive system starts with the mouth, and it has got tongue and various glands and the esophagus, small stomach, small intestine, large intestine. All those organs are part of that organ system, which is known as digestive system. Then organ system together constitute the organism. That is, the root system and the shoot system constitute the plant. Or in case of human beings, we can say that the digestive system, the circulatory system, the respiratory system, the excretory system, the nervous system, and are the skin, the largest organ of our body. They together constitute a human being or an individual. Now first we are going to start with the plant tissues. Plant tissues are of two types. All the plant tissues which are so many number, they can be basically classified into two types: meristematic tissues and permanent tissues. Now here you must understand one thing. The cells or the tissues which are continuously multiplying, that is, they are responsible for the growth of the plant. They are continuously multiplying, they produce new cells, they are known as the meristematic tissues. So meristematic tissues, if you are asked, so what are meristematic tissues? Cells which are continuously dividing and providing for the growth of the plant. Like you have seen plants. The plants continue to grow throughout their life according to their what is their characteristics. Like herbs, they remain very small. Shrubs, they grow taller, and some trees, they grow very taller. So depending on the individual plant, they attain certain heights. So this is because of meristematic tissues which keep on dividing and add to the length, that is height of the plant, and also to the, they also increase its girth or the diameter and add to the stem of the plant. Then permanent tissues are non-dividing cells. There's another kind of tissues that are permanent tissues. So those meristematic tissues which they get converted into permanent tissues, they are non-dividing. That is, permanent tissues do not divide and they become specialized to perform certain functions. The permanent tissues will not divide once they get once the meristematic tissues become specialized as a permanent tissues, they will not divide further, they will not reproduce. They will simply be a specialized cell performing a specific function. So you have to remember that meristematic cells, meristematic tissue, they are continuously dividing and they add to the growth of this plant. They add to the length and girth of the plant, and some of them also get transformed into permanent tissues. Some of the meristematic cells, some of the meristematic tissues get converted into permanent tissues. And once they get converted into permanent tissues, they do not divide further. That is, the permanent tissues do not divide. They simply perform their function and die. They do not have the power of reproduction because they are specialized. If the more permanent tissues have to be added, then they will be derived from the meristematic tissues. अगर नए सेल चाहिए permanent tissues को, तो meristematic tissues ही provide करेंगे उसको, permanent tissues divide नहीं करेंगे. Okay. So now we are going to study about meristematic tissues or the meristem. Meristematic tissues are also known as meristems, and they are found at all the growing points of a plant. Wherever in a plant, wherever the growth occurs, at that point your meristematic tissues will be present, because meristematic tissues are responsible for growth. So they are present at the tips of all the growing organs of a plant. And they are also present between the bark and the wood of trees, where it leads to growth in diameter of the stem. They are present at the tips of the stem and the branches as well. If this is a stem and these are the branches. Okay, so where will the meristematic tissues present? It will be present at the apex, at the tips of all the stems and all the branches. At the branches of all at the tips of all the branches, the meristematic tissue will be present and it will add to the length of the plant. But how does it grow in diameter? So radially also meristematic tissues are present, which add to the diameter of the plant, or we also use a word here, girth. Girth means चौड़ाई जो होती है, the diameter will increase. So they also increase the girth of the plant and length of the plant. Now what are the chief characteristics of meristematic tissues? What are the cells like? The meristematic tissues के cells हैं, what are they like? And what is their shape and structure? So the chief characteristics of meristematic tissues are, these cells are usually small. Why are they small? Because they need to divide continuously. So they don't grow very big in size. They are simply multiplying. So they are small. They are usually cubical. That means they are not very specialized. Simple structure, small size, simple structure, so that they can divide very quickly, frequently, to add to the height and the girth of the plant. Then the cell wall is thin. Again, these all characteristics are to facilitate quick reproduction. because at meristematic tissues we need quick reproduction. We need them to reproduce very quickly and add to the growth of the plant. Then their nuclei are large. Now why are their nuclei large? Because the main purpose of nucleus is to provide for the reproduction. So nucleus divides, the genetic material divides, so the nuclei have to be very large because these are actively dividing cells. Then they do not have vacuoles. Vacuoles are almost absent because vacuoles will add on to the bulk of the cell and they don't need it so much. So vacuoles are also almost absent. Some may be present, small vacuoles may be present. Cells are tightly packed with almost no intercellular spaces. The cells are tightly packed because they are continuously dividing and adding to the growth, so there is no space between them. Intercellular space is not there. And the cells actively divide, adding new cells to the plant. These cells are actively dividing cells. They keep on dividing to add to the growth of the plant. New cells thus produced are transformed into mature permanent tissues. And the new cells which are formed, either they add to the growth of the plant or they get transformed into permanent tissues. That is, they perform a particular function for the plant. They get transformed, change ho jate hain. So these are the chief characteristics of meristematic tissues. Now they can further be classified into two categories: apical meristem and lateral meristem. And lateral meristem is also known as cambium. It leads to the secondary growth of plant. That means when you see a very tall tree which is also which also has a huge diameter, big in girth, so that means there is a lot of secondary growth there. The cambium has grown a lot. So the apical meristem leads to the growth in the height, and lateral meristem increases the diameter of the plant. Now they have given a diagram in your book which is showing the various kinds of meristems. So you can just draw this diagram, because usually sometimes they ask you, not usually, sometimes they ask you to show the longitudinal section of the stem tip showing the position of various meristems. So you can easily see here, like this is the apex. Apex means the tip of something. The tip or the highest point of anything is known as apex. So the apex of the tree is the highest point. So apical meristem, the word is derived from there because that is the highest point. So this is the apex. Here also you will find a meristem. Then at all the other tips, wherever there is a tip, like a ending of a branch or ending of a sub branch, whatever, you will find apical meristem there, and lateral meristem will add to the girth of the plant. Now as you can see here, apical or terminal, this is located near the tips of roots and stems, and also in the growing young leaves near the tips of stems, as well as on the tips of axillary buds. Wherever there is growth occurring, जहाँ से भी plant elongate होगा, plant की length increase होगी, the apical or the terminal meristem will be found there. That is the tips of roots and stems, and also in the young branches, young leaves, and axillary buds also. You know the difference between axillary bud and the apical bud? You must know this. Like this is a stem and these are the branches. So the bud at the apex of a branch will be apical bud, and a bud in the axil, in the angle between the two branches or the main stem and a branch, that will be known as axillary bud. So this is an axillary bud because it is present in the axil. Okay, so this is the axillary bud and this is apical bud. You must know this difference because it will be useful when you study plant hormones also. In 10th class you have a chapter related to plant hormones. It will be useful there. So apical or terminal buds means which are present at the end of branches. That is why they are also called as terminal. So these are present there. Then cambium or lateral meristem. Here in this spelling I is missing. Meristem is I, M-E-R-I. So this meristem is situated below the bark and is responsible for increase in the diameter of the stem. As I told you, it increases the girth of the stem. The plant की जो चौड़ाई होती है और जो उसका stem जो मोटा होता जाता है, that is because of this cambium or the lateral meristem. So this was all about your meristematic tissues. Now second is permanent tissues. Now permanent tissues are made up of cells which have lost their ability to divide. This we've already learnt, that permanent tissues will be those meristematic tissues which have lost their ability to divide, and they will be specialized into something else. They will be performing a specific function as per the requirement of the plant. So they take a permanent shape to perform some permanent function. They may be living or dead. Permanent tissues may be living or dead. Living means they are having a nucleus, and dead means they don't have a nucleus. According to the function performed by the permanent tissues, they are of three types: protective, supportive and conductive. Yeah, protecting, supporting and conducting. First is protective tissue. Protective tissue, obviously it will be present on the outer surface of the plant, and it will have cells with very thick walls so that the inner tissues can be protected. So इसकी characteristics क्या हो जाएंगे? The characteristics of the cells of the protected tissue will be, the cells will have thick walls. The cell wall will be very thick, and they will be found on the surface of the roots, stems, on leaves, that is on the external surface, so that they can protect the plant from various pathogens, adverse environmental conditions and some other enemies as well. Example, epidermis of leaves which secretes a waxy waterproof material. You must have seen certain leaves which have a waterproof waxy coating on their surface, which is also known as cuticle. We call it cuticle. And it is present in which kind of plants? It is usually present in xerophytes to prevent the transpiration, so that the plant doesn't lose much water, because in xerophytes are found in desert conditions. That means they have very, very less water there, and they want to conserve their water, so they have a thick cuticle over their epidermis so that their water is not lost through the process of transpiration. Then another thing, cork cells in the barks containing another strong waterproof material. In the bark also there are certain cells which are known as cork cells, and on them also these protective tissues are found. Again, they protect the inner tissues of the plant from various other pathogens or some birds or any insect which attacks the plant. Then number 2 is your supporting tissue. Supporting tissues are basically of three types. बहुत सारे होते हैं, but which we are going to study in your syllabus, they are of three types: parenchyma, collenchyma and sclerenchyma. These are the three types of supportive tissues which you are going to study in your 9th class. Now first is parenchyma. Parenchyma are, you must remember their names. Don't get confused. Parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma. Number 1 we are going to study parenchyma. Parenchyma are large thin-walled cells, oval or circular or polygonal in shape. That means their shapes can be oval, circular or polygonal. They can be hexagonal or pentagon shaped or any other, means polygon shaped. They usually have a single large vacuole, and they are found in soft parts of plants such as in cortex, that is outer region, and in the pith, that is central region of the plant. Pith is the center of the stem or center of, when you take a, like this is the stem, if you take a TS, transverse section, so the center, this is the center, in the center you will be finding this region is known as pith. So these are found, parenchyma are also found in the pith of a plant. Now they may store food, as in potatoes. In potatoes, the parenchymatous tissues serve as a storage, serve the purpose of storage. They store carbohydrates, or they also may provide temporary supports to the plant. See, in this, when you are learning parenchyma, you must remember that how are you going to learn them? If you have to write certain characteristics, then you have to learn their shape. That is, they are thin-walled, oval, circular or polygonal in shape. Then they contain single large vacuole. That means shape after shape, that is the structure. That they contain a big nucleus and contain a single large vacuole. Then where are they found? The location. Location can also be asked. These can be asked in 1 marks or in fill in the blanks also. Where are they found? What is the location? They are found in the soft parts of the plant, such as in the cortex or in the pith. And then again, do they perform the function of storage? What other functions do they perform? So they may store food, or you can be asked, name a plant in which the parenchymatous tissues are used for storage of food. So that is potato. And they provide temporary support to the plant. So in these diagrams you can see the diagram of the parenchyma cells. Then parenchyma cells can also be of two types. In your book only one type is mentioned, that is Schlerenchyma. Those parenchyma cells which contain chloroplast are known as Schlerenchyma cells. That is, in leaf, if parenchymatous cells contain contain chlorophyll, then they will be called Schlerenchyma. And there's another thing, those parenchymatous cells which have air spaces. If parenchymatous cells have air spaces in between them, a lot of air spaces in between them, then they are known as Erenchyma. So Erenchyma is also a kind of parenchymatous tissue having a lot of air space. So if there is a lot of air space, you can guess where these tissues may be found. Can you imagine? Can you just take a guess that if the parenchymatous cells have a lot of air spaces between them, where will they be found? The air space will make them lighter, so they will be found in aquatic plants. Okay, so these tissues are found in aquatic plants to make them light and enable them to float on water. So Erenchyma are found in aquatic plants. So one is two types of parenchymatous tissue will be, one is Schlerenchyma and another will be, one is Schlerenchyma and another will be Erenchyma. Okay, so just remember these. Now, number 2 is diagrams. You must do the diagrams of parenchyma, Collenchyma and Schlerenchyma, because sometimes they ask, write one characteristics and draw the diagram in 2 marks or 3 marks. These kind of questions can be asked. So you must know their rough diagrams. Number 2 is Collenchyma. Now Collenchyma cells, what is their shape? They are elongated. They are usually elongated cells. That means they are like this, elongated cells. And one more very important thing, that they are thickened at the corners. Their cell wall is thickened at the corners. And it is found in leaf stalks and below the epidermis of stems. It means they are stronger than the parenchymatous cells. These tissues help to support the parts of a plant. They are stronger than parenchyma but weaker as compared to Schlerenchyma. Their cell wall is thickened at the corners. That means, suppose this is a cell. These are Collenchymatous cells. So where are their corners? I'll take a different color. These are the corners. Cell wall will be thickened here. Here. Wherever there's a corner, the cell wall will be thickened. As you can see here, they have drawn in this diagram also in your book. So if you are given diagrams and asked to differentiate or find out the tissues, you can be asked to identify the tissues also. Your diagrams can be given and you will be asked to identify the tissue drawn there. So you just look out for these things. If the cell wall is simple, thin cell wall, then it is parenchyma. If the cell is thickened at the corners, you find these thickenings, then it is Collenchyma. And if the cell is, I'll draw another type of cells. If their cell wall is entirely thickened, like it is like this, having a very narrow lumen, then it will be the third type, the Schlerenchyma. You must remember these structural differences. And you can ask to differentiate between these 3 types of tissues on the basis of their cell wall also. So cell wall in parenchyma is very thin, very, very thin. Sometimes maybe only a single layer of cells. Parenchymatous cells have a thin cell wall. Collenchyma have cell walls are thickened at their corners. or the edges, the corners where they meet different cells, they are thickened there. And in Sclerenchyma, the whole cell wall is quite thickened due to deposit of lignin. This thickness is due to deposition of a chemical which is known as lignin. Okay, so this is the Sclerenchyma. You can be asked the structural differences. So we'll move on to the third tissue, that is the Sclerenchyma. It is hard and it is a dead tissue. The first two which you had studied, the Parenchyma and the Collenchyma, they were living tissues, living cells. These are dead tissues. Okay. So these are composed of long narrow cells which have become dead. Their cell walls develop very thick walls due to deposition of lignin, and they provide strength to plant parts. It is found in stems and veins of leaves. Wherever their strength is required, their Sclerenchyma tissue is present there. It is basically responsible for providing the strength to the plant. Strong बनाता है plant को, मुड़ने नहीं देता है. And इसमें एक और चीज़ है कि fibers and stones, एक और topic दे रखा है, like ropes, mats and certain textiles are made from plant fibers such as those linen and hemp, and these fibers are the Sclerenchyma cells. Wherever you find fibers in a plant, in coconut and certain other plants, they will be made up of Sclerenchyma cells. So you can be asked, what are ropes made up of? Which kind of tissue are ropes, or the mats are made up of? Linen and hemp. So the answer will be Sclerenchymatous cells, so the Sclerenchymatous tissues. Then another thing, the hard walnut shells, अखरोट जो होता है, अखरोट का जो brown cover होता है, the hard shell, that is also made up of Sclerenchyma. And the gritty masses in the skin and the pulp of pears. Pear खाया आपने, नाशपाती जो होती है, that is pear. So when you bite a pear, you will hear a crunchy sound. That crunchy sound is because of this Sclerenchymatous cells. They are in this pear, they are also known as stone cells. In the pear particularly, these Sclerenchyma cells are known as stone cells. So the gritty masses of Sclerenchyma cells present in the pear are known as stone cells. So you can be asked to name these, okay, in one word or in fill-ups. So you must remember. In fact, you must study this book thoroughly. ये जो आपकी selina publications की book हैं, they are very good. They are very detailed as per your syllabus, and they have very good diagrams also, clear diagrams, color diagrams, and you must study them well because it will be helpful in your class 10 also. In 10th also, selina books are very good, and it will be useful in class 10th also, this information. Because sometimes what do you do? That you just overlook these things. So these are not important. But these things which are given in box, they are usually important. And they help you out. Okay? I think today it is sufficient here, children. We will be studying conducting tissues in the next part of our class. In next class, we will be doing conducting tissues. And we will be completing this first part of our chapter, plant tissues. In conducting tissues, we will be studying xylem and phloem in detail, and also doing the in-text questions, small little fill-ups or true-false are given. We will be doing that. Because if I continue this, it will be a very lengthy lecture. And so, we will meet in the next class where we will be doing the conducting tissues.